preserved for posterity.
Yeah.
And I should leave.
Oh, just all the quiet Pastor Ball Vance.
Yeah. It'll all go good then.
Just be a string of nuggets.
You have good line of sight for the community.
Oh.
Well, welcome everybody. I know this is time out of your busy day, and I know this is coming in. Oh, he is coming. All right. But I wanted to start by saying thank you for being here. We're going to go over kind of the evangelism vision that Greg and I have been working on for some time. It's kind of had some on and off starts, rocky kind of
Some years.
Going through the leadership training class, it's allowed us to kind of focus a little bit more on a strategic plan that we can put forward to the whole team at large. But we have an agenda. Greg has a little devotion, and we're going to open with prayer, and then we'll go over material real quick. It should take about, I'm hoping about an hour 50 minutes. That's what we can cadence in case.
All right. I like to go to this section for this kind of subject. It's when Elisha and his servant boy are going to be attacked by the foreign power, and the kid is freaking out, and Elisha is trying to calm him down, and so to start there, when the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning with an army of horses and chariots and surrounded the city. "Oh no, my Lord, what shall we do?" "Don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. And then, what happened, then he gathered them up and took those people, they were struck blind, he took them to the king, and the king fed and watered the enemy and sent them home, and they decided never to come back and attack Elisha again. And the second verse that I like to use with this is 1 Peter 3:15, which we have all gone through recently. "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give an answer to every man that asks you a reason of the hope that you have within you, with meekness and fear." And the thought behind those two things is that we're in a spiritual battle, and one of our goals with this is to help wake up people, that they can have their eyes open to see what's really happening. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming out there, but there's a lot of stuff even bigger behind it, and that everybody is called to be a witness, and we want to help them to do that. So I guess with that, I'll pray with all of us. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the fire that you have given to Will and I about this. I appreciate this opportunity to learn from Will and from others about how to do these things and how to help our family here at church to reach those that you already have in mind. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
So, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the background of the vision event that happened back. There was a survey. The data that I have here was from the first survey. It wasn't the second follow-on surveys. This is just looking at it from that macro view, that very initial one, where 126 members responded, and they wanted to know what's the most important issue facing King of Kings, what should we add to our ministry, and what's the greatest opportunity for King of Kings. And in there, we heard outreach. We have a passion to evangelize. I think everyone in this church has said that. And what is that? We're going to go into it more. Local evangelism and outreach was the greatest opportunity we have, according to this survey. And it's more than just one team. It's every ministry that we have here at King of Kings is really actively engaged in some form of this. And we want to have a vision and a plan that helps everyone. That's what we're here for today. is the most important issue facing King of Kings? Well, we also read in the survey that it's focus, unity, and identity. What we're trying to do here is bring a focus and unity towards evangelism as a central point for training, learning, materials, and just some type of coordination with the other small groups and other ministries that are there, the youth group, and working as that central focus component towards evangelism. So, our vision. We have a long, lengthy, wordy vision statement, and I read it was very verbose, and I wanted something a little more simple. Greg and I were thinking about it, and we mulled this over, and we have a tagline, therefore go. Matthew 28, you just want to say, therefore go. But the vision statement, the real vision statement, is building impactful relationships by connecting his disciples to people needing Jesus. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying to focus on, our vision. Any questions about that vision? What does that mean? I like to always ask when you have things, I like to dissect it down. What does that mean? So building impactful relationship means, John 13:35, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. So working together with the different ministry leaders, the life group leaders, we can identify individuals that are on everyone's hearts and design a plan to grow with love in order to share God's plan of redemption in their lives. That's ultimately what I think we need to do. What does that look like? Well, it's prayer for one another. It's listening and talking to people, meeting their needs where they're at with what we can do. Tailored discipleship strategies for those that are asking about things. And then celebration events, things that bring people together, that go over and talk about how they've built an impactful relationship so that it builds everyone up and we can share those things together. Building impactful relationship requires us to overcome our fears. That's a big thing. I talk to a lot of people, and it's just getting up and going over and talking to someone it's hard.
Just at the first survey on the Saturday when we met, we were talking about these things and about reaching out to people. And Becky was there, and she, well, Greg, here's an intro. So I was talking with the others around the table, and I said, we're all talking together. This is not real. We know how to talk to each other. I'm like, yeah, we do, but how do you add that spiritual component to it? That's what freaks me out. The two other people at the table, I said, well, that's what we're going to do, is to try and help overcome those fears.
So the evangelism team is going to work with King of Kings members, provide an understanding that we can do all things through Christ. I think breaking down that spiritual block, getting the devil out of the picture, and going forth with God to enable us to break down that fear is a big part of this. Through discipleship classes, through prayer, coaching and mentoring, and meeting regularly to encourage one another. That's that. Connecting his disciples to people needing Jesus means. You probably don't have the updated version, Pastor, so okay. Let's see it. Matthew 22:38. And the second is like this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So connecting his disciples to others, your neighbors, in this local community right here where we're at. Now is the time to touch those lives in this community, walking side by side with those unchurched. In our day-to-day interactions, we can share God's word. So this would look like, what does that look like? It looks like planning outreach events in the community. Things like a life group team taking on neighborhood barbecue in that neighborhood, inviting their neighbors.
Farmers market.
Coordinating other other local ministries, external and internal. I mean, there's already talk of, we have the Robbins Roundup. What can we do there? Let's get down to the farmer's market. Let's get a booth out there. Let's really start
new
getting,
one, yeah.
maybe we pass out Bibles, we have some materials, we just sit there and listen. We talk to people. Fellowship events. Having those is a good thing so that we can grow and edify in this. Ride a bike with a friend, grab a coffee in a local cafe. Those are the things that we can do. Connecting as disciples to people needing Jesus requires us to minister to those struggling with faith. Say to your brothers, you are my people, and to your sisters, you have received mercy. Hosea 2:1. So we can work with members seeking to help minister to the others struggling with faith. This is not to address situations that are appropriate for Stephen Ministry or Celebrate Recovery. That's not what this is. Rather, those just needing a different perspective. Deanna Glass was talking to me the other day about her son, and she mentioned how she's tried to get through to him, but maybe having someone else with a different perspective talking to him. That might be all it takes. Coaching apologetics, finding common ground, and prayer.
The term apologetics, I know, tends to, well, there's certain people in the room that it doesn't scare, but the term apologetics scares a lot of people. And I think one of the goals I have with this is that wake up is to let people know they already know this. For example, Eric Mueller was telling me on Sunday that, guess what happened to me, Greg? It's already that time of year when the Jehovah's Witnesses are coming around. And he talked to one of you two, I think, about this. And he said all he'd done was he just said, well, okay, here's where I'm at, John 3:16. And they said, okay, bye. And they knew from that what he was getting at, that Jesus is God and he's the way. He didn't have to know any more than John 3:16 to communicate the message. And that's what I want to get across to the rest of the people here. You don't have to be of whatever degree with Hebrew and Greek and all that.
And also some other tools, like the biggest thing I hear is, how can God allow so much pain and suffering?
Yeah.
Just being able to coach people on what to say, how to respond to those things.
And how to listen.
Connecting as disciples to people needing Jesus requires us to reach out to those that have strayed, beyond just those that are unchurched and are not there. And I think Chris Rupert is doing a good portion of this. So there is an empty seat next to us, and we know who used to sit there. Proverbs says, do not withhold good from those whom it is due when it is in your power to act. I think we know exactly who those people are. We should be at least touching base somehow. Just finding out, just fact finding, listening. Identification, reconnecting, asking, and assisting the elders and the laity.
And Chris.
And I think Chris Rupert owns that scope. I mean, she's already on top of that. So maybe this slide just disappears and goes to Chris. I don't know. Who is the evangelist?
So you can say that. If you see something, say something. Remember that. If you don't see something,
Say something there.
So I look around and we have these ministries. I think it would be important for us to have a bubble that kind of is a focus. So someone who wants to be part of evangelism at least knows where to go. It's kind of that unity and focus component that we want to try to provide an identity to the team. So it would be an evangelism ministry that primarily partners with the primary partners in this column here. The primary partners, the youth ministry, the life groups, the women's ministry, the men's ministry, and the local evangelism partners. Those are who we primarily will work with. And it's going to be about getting these groups into the local communities, having them touch base with members, families, and friends, and non-attending members. just working with them and putting together opportunities, actions, and training around that with these groups. The secondary partners are there, but we don't want to necessarily get too heavily involved with that because they're kind of different in their own way. Does that make sense? What is the outcome we're seeking? The outcome we're seeking is to establish a sustained ministry. I didn't underline this, but I think what we're not trying to do is just a short-term thing here. We are trying to do something that is a long-term focus on community evangelism that's sustainable. A team consisting of stretched and exercised Christians actively coordinating outreach events in the local community with our ministry teams. An outcome we would like to see. A team of leaders, spiritually growing congregational members, preparing them to therefore go. Fellow Christians sharing their testimonies on how they came to Christ through their ministry. That last bullet is kind of like the real outcome we're seeking. Fellow Christians sharing their testimonies on how they came to Christ through this ministry. This ministry isn't bringing people to Christ. It's not doing its job. No, it's not us. It's God. It's God working through the team.
If it's not working for some reason, then we need to ask God, what are we not doing within your will that it's not being blessed?
Their goal is your fruits.
Yeah.
Moving on to key steps and phases. We saw it as, we're not going to really go into a lot of the future stuff. We're going to start small, phase 1, and then growing is the next phase. But what does that mean? So starting small is, we have 3-pronged approach to this ministry. The first one is we want to build a plan for recruitment and continuity. And I'll go into more details. I'm going to cycle through each one of these and talk about them. So the first one is building a plan of recruitment and continuity for the long term. The second one is plan for training and spiritual growth. That's something that we want to make sure is in place as part of the infrastructure in this team. And the third thing is, and there's an anecdotal story we can share. We need to start spreading the gospel now. Just do it. There's the just do it opportunities that are all around us all the time. So I don't want us to be in planning paralysis as we're going about this. There are opportunities now that we can jump on. Let's start getting the farmers market booth in place while the plan is going. Let's start doing these things. Greg and I were sitting around and we were talking about this plan.
Having some sanctified suds.
Having some sanctified suds.
Joy be.
And it was the most ironic thing because we were saying, should we plan first and get that all in place and then go and do? And we were talking about, but we need to do this now. And sitting right over across the table from us was someone that stopped going to church here. And we recognized them. My wife was a friend of this person. And it was almost like God was saying, go. You're talking about doing this, but they're right there, right now. So I tapped my wife on the shoulder and said, hey, talk to her. See what's up. See what the story is. And it made it clear to us that this is do it now also.
It's an and.
Now you got me curious. Know the story.
So I forget her name. She works at Twister's.
Dana Roy.
Dana, yeah.
Dana Roy. The Roy is the.
Yeah, Roy. And my daughter took gymnastics with her daughter, and she was coming here, and her daughter went to confirmation, up to confirmation, and they kind of stopped going. And Lonnie just went over and started asking how things going, and found out that she really is not wanting any part of it, but her husband is still very much interested in coming to church.
Mhm.
So it's that conversation. It wasn't like she was even probing. It just came out. She was just talking, and then Dana brought that information out.
But when Lonnie greeted Dana, Dana greeted her with a big hug.
Mm.
So there's a connection there that can be maintained, and who knows what God does with that connection later on.
So what does phase one, part one look like? How are we going to do this? So the planning, the recruitment, and continuity. The first part of this is about defining key roles necessary for long-term success of an evangelism team. I think those need to be understood and worked through. It also involves establishing methods of communication, coordination, and scheduling events necessary to enable the evangelism team. Let's get the calendars put in place. Let's get the infrastructure put down so that we can communicate effectively and coordinate. Determine the relational ties to existing ministries. I think that has to be defined. What are those boundaries? What are those channels of communication? And then in order to attract and retain members, there needs to be a plan put together with that in mind. I mean, this is something where, how are we going to keep the engine fed in the team? So that's the focus of that first part. The second part is developing lesson plan and course material on evangelism, getting those classes put in place. Generation of source material, pamphlets, and gospel material to enable the evangelists in the field. Then scheduling classes and facilitation, just getting that into place. That's branch 2. The third one, spreading the gospel. How? As there's planning going on, we also need to hit the streets. Involves neighborhood barbecues, farmers markets, booths, local college presence, co-college.
Kirkwood, Mount Mercy.
Yeah, all of them. Let's really get someone that's either transitioning, getting in there, and putting together maybe a small group that just is a Bible study or something. Just get presence on the college. If we focus on that, we get it. Where I grew up in Akron University had all these events that were evangelistic events that were all fed by the college. It was mostly driven by the college age. They were the ones that were doing all the work and bringing it to life. So, I'm hopeful on that one. Provide the ability to work with those wishing to share the good news with friends and loved ones. That's another thing this team has to be kind of cognizant of, is in order to build impactful relationships, it means that we have to give time up. Not so much money as much as it is your personal time. So that's a commitment that will have to be sure we understand.
And I want to make sure that we are known to the church body. You know, Rachel came to me, 7:30, I got time. Rachel came to me recently before Christmas, and she said, "You know Valerie?" "Yeah, I know Valerie." "Well, the cancer she's got is going to bad. She may only have months to live." She's somewhere off in Florida, this lady. Rachel used to work with her. Well, the lady is Jewish. She had gone to one of my Christ in the Passover presentations years ago. We had talked about things. But Rachel and she didn't really talk about stuff. They just kind of knew who each other was. Rachel's like, "I can't talk to her, Greg. This is just too hard. Can you help me write a letter? I have to get something out to this woman before she goes." "Okay, you write the letter. Let's work on it." So we send this letter out. I add some things to it. Okay, she sends it out. The woman writes back, and I'm expecting, dark person that I am, "Well, thank you very much for your input, but I have my own. I'm good." That's the typical response. Her response was, "I can't say this in front of my family, but I believe that Jesus is the Messiah, that he died for my sins and rose from the dead. And I haven't really had anybody to talk to about this." And so, bang, engage, work, drive. We connected Kevin Parviz, Jewish LCMS pastor in St. Louis. I sent a list of 324 messianic prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. We started talking about things, and she's like, "Thank you so much. I printed all that out, started looking through this. Is great." I didn't do any of that. That was one of those things where I just finally got there as part of the reaping. I mean, that's sweet, you know. But Rachel wouldn't have sent that letter, probably wouldn't have sent that letter if she hadn't have had a team member to help encourage her to do it. That's what I want to be there for. And I want to be there for people now, because I know there are people in this congregation now who have those situations with friends, family, kids, and they want help and they just don't know what to do. Back at you.
We're growing to phase 2. So that's our phase 1. Any questions on phase 1? It seems like a lot, but I think we have something that we're going to drill on as to what this would look like, what that composition would look like to achieve those.
Let's say there's an art class, Jason Kepnick, I'm going to meet with him there in about an hour. He's very actively involved in developing a disaster recovery ministry. He has a number of people. Now that's, I guess, witness through deed, not so much word. So, and he's working on developing a team. He's got his own project, got his own plan, working on developing his own team, all that. How do you see him connecting with this or this connecting with him? How do you see those? I'm just pulling one out of the middle. There will be others.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Probably just Ruprecht is another one. And so how do you?
I see it in twofold. I see it as he's already got something, and every time we don't know when a disaster is going to happen, and they're going to be deployed out there, wherever
Right.
they're going to be deployed. But there is time when his team might need some evangelism training. When they do meet with people, what do they say? How do they talk to them? What is that?
I've got
What's
time
already
for it.
happened?
Yeah.
I've got time for it.
Yeah,
If someone asks.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's already happened. I mean, when you go clean up a woman's house, she knows it's a bunch of Lutherans who are showing up and she tells them what to do. So that,
And I totally agree that those actions speak much louder than any words.
well, they
But
could,
God's
they
word is
have both.
powerful,
Yeah,
and they need to have that.
yeah.
And so that's what this.
But that's
team
what
would
I'm
be
looking
bringing.
for is how do you see that connection happening? Does Jason?
You would
talk
ask,
to
you know,
Jason
you
or
would
Jason
see on
come
the
to you?
calendar that we're having evangelism class on this time, and some of his people may want to attend that evangelism class.
So we did,
Materials that would be printed out, like almost like Bible verses, key Bible verses that are evangelistic in topical form. So you have topics of things already there, so they can take with them and have that as a guide.
I think a key component to helping out people like that, and we did that with the Peru team years ago. Role play was a big thing. Cody Jordan was part of that, and at the beginning he was just like, and he didn't know what to say. He said we didn't know what to say, and I just said, okay, stop script. And we got real. And at the end of it, he knew exactly what to say, and he was more comfortable with it. And people will ask you, why are you doing this? That's 1 Peter 3:15 right there. And we want to help them with Deanna Glass said, I thank you for putting that on because Greg Glass found a space that he could practice saying these things in a safe way without feeling like someone was going to chide him, oh, you're a Bible thumper or something. He was able to get used to saying that, and then he was able to do it at work. So that's where that's going to come in. We're going to help those people get over fear.
Also, I think another thing that we would like to do is we need to celebrate those
So
stories.
to sum up what you said earlier, so you see this as an enabling relationship that wherever Chris Ruprecht and her people end up, or Carol Montag has some other ideas. I mean, there's a bunch of sort of individual project ideas in our leadership group. But they'll all involve connection with other people. And so see this as enabling them and reaching out with the word as they're
Mhm.
doing the deed. Is that
Yeah.
the way to describe it?
Double powerful.
Okay.
I could even see this as something that was worked in as a part of the curriculum. The training for clothing vector or training to serve the
Mhm.
city and beyond. If someone ever asks you why,
Mhm.
here's a very simple
You just get used to saying it.
and leadership. Very are accustomed to.
Yeah.
That was added. So, I think embedded in all of our significant. We can
Hmm.
do what you say. Maybe it was Jesus on you.
And
this
Steve,
group
I want
would-
to add one
Get
more
the
part.
gospel.
There's a second part to this. I talked about the one part. The second very important part is we're all kind of off on our own doing things,
Mhm.
Hmm.
but nowhere is there a celebration event sharing about the stories and the testimonies of those that have come to Christ through their different things that would help build us up as a church and as a body of Christ to be energized, to hear these stories, to know about them. I think that's something that we can also bring to the table.
I don't think it's fair that the angels get to celebrate and we don't.
So this group wouldn't say we need to have, although you did say earlier, certain things that need to be in place. But for example, with a leadership class, you wouldn't come in and say, Steve, we need A, B, C. A, B, and C would depend on the individual members of the class. And this would intersect with them as they're going out and defining their initiatives, that this would enable those to carry the word out with those initiatives.
And there are going to be times that we do have to reach back to the leadership for some things. Like here coming up, we're going to talk about our needs to seed this ministry and our needs that the assistance from others. And so we'll talk about that in a moment
Okay, I
here.
didn't, go back to your, yeah, okay,
What time are you gonna meet with Jason?
7:30.
He's sitting in there.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, at 7:30. He can come in, can he?
Yeah.
See if I can.
Cord.
That's
Oh,
actually like
cord.
a-
So phase 2 is,
Should I wait for him? Real quick, can I, just anecdotal, but I meet with pastors every month, separate from regular scheduled pastors meeting. And one of the guys asked me, so what are the growing churches in Cedar Rapids? And I said, well, for sure Veritas and Antioch.
Hmm.
He goes, well, what are they doing? Well, another pastor had actually gone to Veritas. And he went through this. And then here's how he ended his description. Pretty much everything we're not.
Ooh, ow.
No, not our church, his church.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything we're not.
Is that because of like
But what is it?
curiosity?
Oh,
You're
that's
doing
a
something.
whole- that's
a
whole-
warmer, easier message to
whole
swallow.
nother discussion. But I just, it was an epiphany to me. The other guy went, yeah. Not that he's ever going to constant change, but something in between.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
And Steve, I think you said a question that I think we need to really, as part of that first
Is he
planning
coming?
part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
All right, so all in favor of Jason doing that, say aye.
All in favor?
we elected you to do it. So
Mhm.
there you go.
Good.
Have a
What am I
seat,
being
Jason,
elected to
anyway.
do?
Nothing.
I'll sit here in the middle, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, unity, vision, and focus. There are things that we're going to focus on. There are things that other ministries are going to focus on. But being able to have a point that people could say, I want to be part of evangelism, it's a starting point for them, right?
Mhm.
And then being aware of all the ministries, then we can plug people in too, right?
Okay.
We talked about phase one, starting small. This is only going to be a small team, about 7 people, to accomplish those first components. Phase two is the next phase of growing, enacting the plans that we've defined in the upper 2 components, and then creating even more evangelism teams, breaking it off. Because you don't want to have one big, massive team of people doing this. It's better if you have smaller interpersonal teams of smaller bodies to build those stronger relationships and to grow that way. So that's kind of where we see it going in the next phase. So what does phase one look like from a timeline? We took a guess. We looked at what was on the table. We looked at how much effort was involved, and we said, depending upon who is there and their availability, we could probably get the first part done in 3 months. The training of spiritual growth materials, Greg already has a very good handle on a good portion of it, but it's about cleaning that up, getting some homework assignments,
Mhm.
putting some more materials together around that. So about 2 months for that effort. Maybe some help with the pastors on some of that too. And then the spreading the gospel portion, well, that's continuing. That can start day one. There's no reason why that has to, and that just goes on. I don't want that part to stop. What does the team look like? We thought about it. We prayed about it. We thought about the spiritual gifts needed for this. And one of the things that we're looking at is, and we just laid it out and then we counted the bodies up and it really turned out to be 7. So we just stopped.
Good enough.
Mhm. Yeah.
It was serendipitous.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
first one was we needed communications and a vision, someone that can really set that vision and can be that focal point, that communicator to both the congregation, to the team, that sort of thing. We need a bona fide evangelist, someone that really knows how to hit the streets and has the street cred on being evangelist. Now, you say you're the evangelism team. Should you have everyone's an evangelist?
No.
Well, you need that one solid model. That's what we're looking for, the solid model. Process, administration, coordination. That's going to be 2 people. See that playing out as 2 people.
Hmm.
Teacher, someone that leads the classes, that has the materials, that knows how to facilitate. Recruitment, someone who's focused on, it's a perpetual sustained model that we're looking for, so we need constant recruitment on things, activities, and what we're going to be doing. And then a researcher, someone that's looking out there, going to the other churches, asking what they're doing for evangelism, what works, what doesn't work, feeding that back into the team.
What's the post-church culture looking for? How can we connect with them?
What works with college people? What's the message? That's the team I'm looking for. Impacts to the congregation. If we were to go forth with this, I believe the impacts are going to be clarification of where to go to support, or for support to spread the good news. Someone wants to say something to their brother, but they don't know quite what to say under this circumstance. They can come to us, and we can help with some of that. Testimonials shared to show God is on the move. I think that's a key thing to growing a church is to know that he's on the move, to see that, so that's important. A means to effectively coordinate and communicate community evangelism events. We don't do that, no one's going to show up. It's going to be crickets. So we want to make sure we have that. And meeting the needs of the voice of the congregation, outreach and focus. Those are two things we heard. So this is helping to meet that need, this ministry. But the most important, the bottom line, impacts of the congregation, new Christians in our midst. So beyond the ask for helping to those 7 people, where Greg and I probably fit 2 of them, if not 3. We have to figure out the other roles. We need your help in finding those people and getting them connected with us. Something we're asking. We want to obviously reach out and talk to people, but it's good that we also have a top-down help with this. We need help with the congregational time and board face time, just talking about this. I think that's important so that this message can get out there. Maybe that's Pastor Rich just talking about it. Maybe it's Greg and I making a little video with Kirk Munson on it and getting it to show up on the screen. We already have a really kind of cute idea that we're working on that for recruitment and other things. And the hint is Blues Brothers. That's all we're going to say.
Why does this not surprise
I've already got the costume.
you? Not either.
And I could just see,
Anyway.
it's there. Okay. And then, of course, that top-down support versus a grassroots to foster vision, unity, and focus. I don't think we can do this on our own. We need that top-down approach. So that's the assistance needed. Startup costs? Well, looking at the just do it part of it, the just do it part is, we looked at the entrance fee for a farmer's market booth, $250, bam. New Testaments, depending upon what you're going to get, and how many, that can be anywhere from $500 to $1,500 for an entire season worth of New Testaments that we can hand out. Colored pamphlets, we need to figure out what the costs are. I haven't gone and priced any of that stuff. Something that we can physically hand out with materials be distributed at the booth. We'd like to have logos, pins, the Therefore Go, and T-shirts made up. So when we're at the booth, we look kind of together and in sync, with that kind of that good professional look too. And then money for the evangelism pamphlets and training materials. We'll have to cost that out. That's
Fairly minimal.
You said you've got 2 or 3 covered of the 7,
Mm-hmm.
obviously evangelists.
my wife can help with some of the coordination and communication. Give you the vision.
Communication. I could potentially help with teaching. It's you as a new business, you're going to have to play a lot of roles until you find the people to fill those roles.
One of the things that worked well for our leadership classes this year was convening a kind of an advisory group of people who nominated individuals to be considered for the leadership class. And I'm just so pleased with the result of that, because, if you ask me to fill those positions, you'll get people like me, or people I know.
Yeah, tell them who you recruited to do this.
Oh, gee, your wife was one. Let's see, who all was Ian Clayman was on there, Deb Sorensen,
Who else was there? And how many total?
There were about 4 or 5. I call those things councils of the wise. I think that it's, if you could, the reason we did that was we wanted a window into different parts of the congregation, especially the younger parts, which, you ask me who's a good candidate, you're not gonna get that at all. And so that's one thing. I mean, we don't have a sort of spiritual gifts nominating group that's sort of a nucleus group within our congregation. A smaller congregation would be a nominating committee. Every time something comes up, they nominate somebody and the congregation votes on them, and they sort of keep tabs on who's available for what and who's got what skills and who would be good. So we're sort of bigger than that, but we don't really have anything like that. So that's one thing you could get, and you don't necessarily have to convene them as a group. You could just go to them individually and say, I'd like you to, we're looking for this kind of person. Could you give me the names of 4 or 5 people that come to mind? It's a thought. It's a hard barrier to get over as to who to ask. But I think if you could get some of those suggestions, and this, there may be some within this group who could do that.
Suggestions, it is also maybe someone reaching out to them that has a good relationship. I don't know what that is.
Very thoughtful question, and that's what I'm thinking for the next round, that as we convene an advisory group, we may also ask them after pastor sends them a letter inviting them. Maybe the one who nominated them could also call, say, I know pastor invited you, and they would have that relationship. Right. Yep. Very, very good. Good point.
The volunteer will write your name on the list in the survey that we did for outreach. That information is available. Have you gotten that? Or
We have Kathy provided that list.
And it may be some of those people could go down through some of those and identify a few of them that are pretty well connected, or go to our pastors or staff, Tony or whatever. Especially if you want to push a younger audience, then Tony would be, a good one to say, hey, here's 2 or 3 people who are pretty connected who you might go to. So it might make for 5 recruiting calls rather than 25.
Yes, yes.
Just I was thinking spot recruitment. She'd be really good. I mean, not necessarily want to be.
But she can help send people to you.
But if you want someone just to do that task,
Now, any modifications to either the vision, the activities,
The house.
plan, the house, any feedback on any of that?
It's just my questions were how this is kind of embedded in the congregation relative to existing efforts, and what the relationships are, kind of the org structure, if you will, of how
We aren't a parent, we are a peer to the other ministries.
yeah,
And one of
understand,
the
but
things that I was thinking was the life groups, working with Becky and a team to say, can we schedule neighborhood backyard barbecue
oh yeah,
from each of the life groups here? Here's kind of the thing that the theme of the barbecue or something like that, working with them.
Smooth meats.
and it could be that you could use the life groups because they're always all looking after the series that we get assigned. They're all looking for, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
And you could have individual, kind of go back to things we studied earlier and that have been incubating on people's minds, and go back to them with a discussion of how you would do a neighborhood group, or just kind of rekindle.
And the desired outcome of some barbecue thing like that is that you know your neighbors better, and they know you better, and they maybe know a few other Christians from your church, and oh, he's not a nut, I can have a relationship with this person. Making connections.
I was
every,
thinking-
every group, it's going to be a unique relationship with each different ministry. Like the youth, it would be a different relational tie than with the life groups.
Yep.
I was thinking of kind of what would be a visual or an analogy for something like this, and this may seem silly to you all, but you know, if you didn't know anything about it, say, you know, stand up once, so go ahead, stand up. So we sort of not familiar with anatomy, we never studied anatomy, we wouldn't know anything about anatomy. We look at Will and say, what enables him to stand up? And we'd all say something related to his muscles or his skin, what we can see.
No, it's the beard.
I was just going to say, it's the beard.
That'd probably be included on the short
Hours
hours.
of the beard.
But the
Uh-huh.
reality of what enables you to stand up is a skeleton. And I sort of see this as somewhat analogous to that, that this is the kind of element that enables, you know, sort of much of what we do. And it's not, may not be all that visible in the form you've presented here, but it takes on visible form in a face or a relationship or a kindness, act of kindness or deed, an event or something.
I would appreciate getting you have some real, what do we need in that list, that you would send that to me, and then I can take that to the staff and start bringing.
Mhm.
Secondly, Jason, when you were sitting out there, we were talking about
Get ready for my next meeting.
Chainsaw toss.
the service ministry there.
Mhm.
Ministry of service, ministry through service.
Mhm.
And it's entirely possible, it has occurred already. Why are you guys doing it? And then if it becomes apparent to them as a church group, maybe the Holy Spirit's gonna nudge them and can you explain? Or tell me why. And we were thinking of approaching you and saying, would you be willing to encourage the group to have a real brief presentation on, if someone asks you, here's some suggestions.
Sort of like the hit list, right?
Well,
The short list of.
Here's some hit list. Here's some role play you can practice,
And you-
so you can.
yeah,
And bring
You
names
feel a
back
little more
too,
comfortable
if
with
you
it.
even have names of people that are interested.
Yeah, we
So
helped
We can reach
Okay.
back out to them.
old Sally Smith, and her husband just died, and she's in a tough place, and he did ask us.
Mhm.
That's just had his funeral. Just jumped out of my head. Over at Keystone. Jim.
Hmm.
He passed away. Well, what got him back to church was when his wife died.
Okay.
And,
Orange.
and I wouldn't call on him.
Hmm.
And I think he was here every Sunday, so he was visiting family.
So the first outreach act, if we could get the youth involved, is building up a booth for the farmers.
Mhm.
Sorry. I'm just kidding.
They're busy until next fall, so.
But the life group, you can-
I think that's when it starts.
Someone with woodworking skills.
We have sermon events every year.
Uh-huh.
Every life group is asked to do like 1 or 2 sermon events every single year
Okay.
outside
Yeah.
of themselves. Could we add the opportunity, not as required, but
That's an
are
option.
there any groups who would be interested in doing something evangelistic
Well,
in their neighborhoods, like a barbecue?
or helping
the
to,
Robbins Roundup,
helping to staff the booth at Nubo.
or helping staff, yeah. And connect.
Mhm.
And again, here's a little brief primer on if someone asks.
I would highly encourage a very strong emphasis on that area of communication. I think it was communicating and
Vision
something
coordinating.
coordination and-
that you're looking for to staff that, because the real success to me in an effort like this is based on constantly reminding our people to think evangelically.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just happen. I mean, even I don't automatically think
Mhm.
evangelically. I'm supposed to, but I don't. And uh, just the constant reminding and communicating of that process, I think is probably the most important thing
Yeah.
to making something like this work.
It's a marketing thing. Why they pay marketers to be marketers.
You have to sell your salesman first
Mhm.
on the value of what you've given him to sell.
Yeah.
And they have to be convinced of it. And even though the congregation has said that this outreach is its number one goal, local outreach is the most important thing, I would be willing to wager that at least 50% of those answers are based on the idea that we need to have more numbers rather than more Christians.
Maybe just more butts in the pew, or
Yeah.
Sure. Mhm.
And so if there's not, just because you have a high outreach component doesn't mean you've got a high evangelism support. And so it's not as automatic as it might seem.
Mhm.
I could ask, start off a sermon where I would have testimonial, which I am very much open to. It's just a matter of working it into the order of worship
Right.
itself. I want to start a sermon one day, part of the time. Do you want to die never having led someone to Christ? Never having had that amazing experience. Because how many years was back? Never having shared the gospel. And I know that's wrong, but that is so savage. The
But it's-
reality of the majority.
it's- Also, a good news if you can share those testimonies both from the receiver and the sender of that good news, that the sender got this amazing hit. You know, it can almost become, it's like the one good addiction that's out there. It's like, I gotta carve off some time because I really want to do that. I want to see this person.
You know, you never know, though, what witness you are.
Yeah.
I know the theology, and I do truly do, but I tell you what, there's something about the law that sets you up to receive the gospel.
Yeah.
And I would never leave it there. Matter of fact, what I would do is, I had sitting recently. And this person was weeping. That was my,
Hmm.
when I go and sit down. And the person said, I have a friend that I care about deeply. Just found out. She doesn't mention. I thought of her. Then turned it down. Ripping me short. How many people in our church have grandchildren?
Yeah.
Children. Or they know a sister, a mother who's in the last days. That's closing the gap. Which from you want to die never having shared the gospel of Jesus Christ, never having the opportunity. Show someone Christ in heaven. Dude, here's someone who's aching, weeping. You may not be weeping outside, but you were weeping inside. Let's address this. And then turn it into the gospel. And my story about the 99-year-old guy. He's how old is he? 70. Yeah, 70-year-old man. Kevin asked me if I would go share Christ with his father. Oh, he's dead. Cancer. That.
Hmm.
They would share Christ. In faith. Sometimes I look in the shelf for a nice bowl. What if it wanted baptism?
Sweet.
And that gives people hope.
hmm
And when I was sharing that story with someone who's child and turned away from God, I want to see it. I
Mhm.
want to know it before I go there.
That's the other component you have to teach is trust God,
Yes.
because you don't
God
know when
loves
he's
that
going to do it.
child.
Mhm.
But to say, if it's hard for you, follow Rachel.
Mhm.
But there's some folks that I'd like you to sit down
Mhm.
and maybe we could put something together
Mhm.
and go to share the gospel with your child.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is so many applications here. Video, huge. Starts to be irritated. Looking it into the fiber of all of our major existing ministries or applicable ministries, even service. We do make people curious when we go and get doctors going. I was just listening to a book on tape by David McCall, if you know who he is.
Yes. Yes. 1776.
But that, yeah, 1776 and Truman and
Mhm.
Jonestown flood and the Brooklyn Bridge. He was their narrator for the war, Civil War.
Oh.
The Ken Burns series of baseball. He was the narrator. And he referenced in this book Times Beach, Missouri, and how there was a big flood, went through a treatment plant, and toxins destroyed, completely destroyed. Well, when I was at seminary, that's when that happened, and we went down and we're trying to
Mhm.
save this church building from the flood. And I'm thinking, here the water was up to my knees. I'm going, I'm glad I reached 60. Good grief. But it meant so much to the community.
Yeah.
That we went down and that we actually got to share Christ. As you know, we're here.
Hmm.
For those who wanted to know where we were from the seminary. We have a full chance to share Present Christ. He loves you, cares about you. We're here representing. God's being just an example of service.
Yeah.
We have some pockets of stuff like junk closets, roughly, maybe that's a good analogy, but that are kind of embedded within the congregation, but maybe need to be repurposed. What I'm thinking of specifically, and then you have the other examples, mission of the month.
hmm
Now that's something, if you talk to people, every time we have a leadership class, somebody tells me, hey, you need to have one of them, do mission of the month.
One of
Yeah.
them, as in one of your participants?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not suggesting anything be done with that, but I'm just asking that it be included in the mix, that if there are things that can be used that the congregation is already aware of and identify, that
Mhm.
might be a vehicle.
Events
At least people
could
know
be.
what it is.
hmm
As part of that is meeting needs to meet people's needs.
Mhm.
You don't have to.
And if it were a Rock'em Sock'em Vital program, that might have more impact.
Mhm.
With the people leading it.
Yeah, so one of the things I learned was they call it what's your matchstick story?
Mhm.
So you're supposed to be able to share it by the time that
Mhm.
burns down, which if I ever grabbed a matchstick, it's about 5 seconds. But, I mean, by the time I get that thing lit. But yeah, it just, it's not long, it's short. It's something you can easily communicate and share. But why now? And
Okay. Next
I haven't
steps.
perfected mine yet either. I'm just letting you know.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. So I have two actions for sure. One of them is to get through the pastor, the list of needs. The other one is to start working with that list of names and working with the Council of Wise to figure out how we recruit them. We need some council of Wise.
He has no trouble recruiting people, but because I'm pretty close to this whole process. His leadership. He got super excited. Very animated after that meeting was so helpful, so clarifying. I think that would have much the same impact on you guys as you asked these folks that you would trust their opinion. Give us some names.
Mhm.
So, I can
Different parts of it.
sort of help you on the mechanics of it, but you need to be thinking about who might be on that list. And were they knowledgeable? Anyway, we talk about this later, we don't need to.
On your list of, you had 7. That one. Are you thinking that that's like 7 names?
Yeah.
Now that would be in addition to
So this is the first team.
just
Mhm.
The
those
first
7 are going to
Phase one.
take phase 1. Okay.
Phase one.
Okay.
And part of this is, obviously there is a working with the other ministry teams and coordinating and communicating with the other ministry teams and
Mhm.
using some of those relationships to help move evangelism as well.
Okay.
Not, we're gonna do all the evangelism. It's connecting with and strategizing and planning with other ministry teams.
Yeah, because like I know on my side, I'm working with Stephen Ministry,
Mhm.
right? Because a lot of people that we go and serve,
Yeah,
they're
Yeah,
actually
so-
hurting. I mean, like I described to Steve, it's or this weekend, like if we get around to swinging the hammer, great, but that's not really why we're there.
Mhm.
I mean, it's that's just kind of this thing that helps us
That's your
open that
vehicle.
door. Yeah, it's there to help open that door.
And we're not trying to replace student ministry, nor are we
Mhm.
trying to do what Celebrate Recovery does.
Right.
This is just getting the word to the unchurched and building relationships on it.
I'm gonna touch base on, you said something, Greg, about marketing
Mhm.
and being in sales and marketing and if I often have cards right in my office of King of Kings,
Yeah.
of the new people that move in
Mhm.
into the community and and I'll ask them if they go to church, have they found a church?
Yeah.
But the only reason I do that is because I have to be sold first on what I'm selling and who they
Yeah.
come in. So I have to be sold on King of Kings. Otherwise, I would never recommend somebody to come here and then, you know what, if they're Catholic and want to, like, there are plenty of great Catholic churches and I'll point some out to them too as
Mhm.
well. But my point is, and this is kind of goes away from yours, but maybe people got to feel good about the church, King of Kings, before we can recommend it and become evangelists.
Well, I
And-
want to ask that question because what if it is truly about just getting God's word into someone, regardless of the stamp?
church home.
No offense,
That's
pastors,
the
but
cure.
if
That's
they're
the cure, is you tell them about Jesus yourself. I'll be like, you bring them, I'll tell them.
if they decide to come here afterwards,
Yeah.
awesome.
You
But that's not the mission.
The mission is to
you tell them.
work with Jesus as he's making a connection between them and his Father.
And this is between you and me talking.
And it's not related to a
It's
church.
already at work, as Greg said here. So well,
Yeah.
It's already at work. You don't have to convince anybody of anything. It's just asking you, tell them.
It's
You already,
already happened twice with me and they ask me, where do you go to church? And I say, I go here. And then they show up. It doesn't fit their personality, but they still show up.
Yeah.
Well, when I was going back even to where you said we had somebody that had left the church and then they came back. And, you know, if we could, one, keep people from leaving the church, and give people a sense of, this is my home. It makes it so much easier to recruit
Mhm.
than people to go out and sell the church and sell. And I don't want to use that term sell, but to share what they feel. And it makes everything so much easier. So, you know, and I just, you know, as a curious, it'd be interesting to sometime ask, do you know the person next to you when you're standing up there?
Mhm.
Do you know their name? Do you know their name? And I've met a few people by just turning around and saying, you know, they've been behind me for 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, and I'm not even,
Yeah, yeah.
sure, you know, and I have to practice what I
You can't,
preach.
it's hard to build relationships looking at the back.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you know,
Name tag Sunday helps because I talk to people because I can say their name or they can say my
Yeah,
name.
it does help.
That's why I have that mug.
I'm looking forward to those directories.
so my point is, I started the church to feel good about it
Oh,
and
yeah.
easily sell it. And then, you know what, maybe we want to go out and do more. Because it's easy to tell people about a great movie. And this movie is King of Kings.
Part of the marketing comment was just, Greg Yokanovich told me once, like, you got to always have that message out there in their heads, so that when they need it,
They call you.
they call you right off because it's already in their head. I want to have that message in the congregation's head. There's somebody out there that can help you with an with a question for your, and it's in their heads so that when they finally, I got to talk to somebody about oh, that's right. We've got something at church. I'm going to call these guys, Ghostbusters.
The Blues Brothers.
Yeah, the Blues Brothers.
Jake, which was Elwood.
Wrong movie.
Yeah, wrong movie.
Elwood and.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Jake and Elwood. I don't know if we figured out
You're
which is.
Elwood.
That's right. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm Elwood.
And I'm gonna, light the cigarette. We're on a mission.
Oh, what a great. You get a candy cigarette, would you?
Like,
Very good. Very.
And this was in the making how long? Initially.
I've been under medicated about this for a number of years,
So,
but
just one word of caution, and I don't think this wrong, but positive, always positive,
always.
Yeah.
always positive, because coaching, you do address the negative, but you address it in a positive.
Mhm.
Here's what you do.
Yeah.
We are typically so weak. We can wax it later. But how poor we are in reaching out, many of the miseries takes to run for Christ, dying, declining. It just, all it does is discourage.
It just reinforces the idea that we're gonna die.
But we talked about that today, this afternoon. Several of the guys are just, their guts are shredded. Or the fact that their churches are dying. They're just dying. They're just wonderful, solid, caring, and loving. And today was probably, usually we meet the most honest, open, forthright meeting we have. What are you guys doing? I said, you guys get, there's two of us, Pastor Hartwig and the church, are growing. And not by a ton. I mean, I figured out we've grown by an average of 13 years. in our tenure.
13.
That's not fabulous, but when you compare it to
Positive growth. Better.
oh,
Negative growth, yeah.
You know, we've had two or three stretches where we haven't gone down a little bit. That's
A trend.
When you think of it, those terms, by the way, they can help one person
Mhm.
come here more faithfully. And that's another, and Pastor Ball does good research on that. It's frequency.
Mhm.
That's hurt us as much as not having frequencies dropping across the board again.
Mhm.
People are attending 25 times a year instead of 35.
Yes.
We call
So
it
going
lapse
back to
can.
the pastures, what's that?
We call it lapse cancellations.
Yeah. So we, I said, did you guys get the last Lutheran witness from last year? It would have the statistical report of our church body. And when I was at seminary, I started seminary in 1980. And Jerry Bellinger started before that. He became part, and I asked Jerry, when we were at seminary for, in that time, weren't we about 3.2 million members in the 70s, 80s? But yeah, I remember that. And had over 6,000 congregations, and today,
2.5.
under two.
Under 2?
Under two.
Oh.
The average congregation, if I remember my numbers right, in the 70s, worshipped about 176, 75, I think. Now we're about 120. 120. Focus on the positive. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, as we were talking about that, so many of them was just things.
Yeah.
Just things. And they asked me, okay, what in a phrase do you think is going on at your churches? And keep going. You keep being closer to Christ. You write your leadership stuff. You go ahead and get going with your serving. You guys move with your evangelism. You do it. You go and you get that youth group flourishing. Okay? Go, move. Do it. Go.
Therefore,
All right.
so.
All right.
Well done. Very well, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Concluding prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time that we can come together and glorify you. We want to get the word out, spread the word, help us, enable us, open our hearts and minds to what it is that is your will for this new ministry.
Pastor,
Thanks for the time.
pastors,
Thank you.
and Todd, we're 4:00 tomorrow. I don't know that I think maybe I got back to you, I'm not sure. My day was just weird.